and deans of various divisions, and very important, the participants who have taken the initiative and interest to attend this symposium for 2 days, Indian psychology. My dear friends, maybe I am not a scholar on Indian psychology, or maybe I haven't deliberate on this subject. I have been just asked to give a special address to all of you. But our Indian psychology, which is the ancient psychology which all of us know, and how much we have delved into it, and what has happened in the last 1 century with the modern psychology which has taken place in the Western world and Indian world, and what we Indians can contribute in the future. And that is where I think the deliberation has to go on. And I see a lot of youngsters who have taken interest in these areas rather than the emerging, just going out towards that external world of software and engineering and external gratification. I see youngsters also taking interest into the internal outlook towards the society as a whole, and this is a good sign in this era to find younger generation entering into the ethos of philosophy and psychology and still making a career out of it. And that I think I see a future great scholars and scientists in this gathering, and I wish them a grand success for that. Our Indian psychology, if we trace it, is 5,000 years old, or maybe ancient, billions of years, which we name. But still, if we trace the 5,000 years of Indian characterization of our civilization, our Indian psychology is deeply rooted in philosophy, the self-affirming spirituality, our Indian subcontinent, which has been on the center of spirituality and given rise to so many folk tradition and extraordinary wisdom, which has given to us, and also the intellectual tradition which we have built over a period of 5,000 years and maybe beyond that. We have built it. It is something extraordinary where I think we need to deliberate on this, and these 2 days insight into this kind of ethos will really give an insight for us to understand the future and the global as a whole, that how the humanity can be evolved through our Indian psychologists. Even our great scriptures has emphasized on nirvana, samadhi, self-actualization. The humanist psychology of the 20th century, when it started developing on the paranormal dimensions of growth, which talks about Maslow's self-actualization or transcendental actualization, it talks about. But then all our scripture, it all origins from our deep roots of our Indian culture, our Indian scriptures, Indian ethos, and the roots has been found from that. Even Maslow has acknowledged about it, and our psychology becomes relevant all over the world in just 100 years, which was already there for 5,000 years, and we have understood that. Even you take that Buddhism psychology, Hindu psychology, yoga psychology, Oriental psychology, these are all the roots are there even in today's literature, which we read even now and then. If we talk about parapsychology, if we talk about consciousness psychology, if we talk about even that mysticism of psychology or religion psychology or transpersonal psychology, these are all externally borrowed from our Indian literature, scriptures, and which the world is now talking about. But what the world has been doing in the last 100 years, and where the world would have missed out, maybe I think the scholars are going to deliberate on all these things, and I want all of you to please be attentive on every word of the scholar speaks to all of the eminent scholars, because it is their deep-rooted understanding about the culture, the tradition, the beliefs, the world, the humanity, the essence of outlook towards how we can evolve as human beings. And where I think in this modern psychology and our traditional psychology of millions of years, even if you talk about psychosomatic relationships, where in ancient times, maybe in the first introductory stanza of Ashtanga Hridaya, it talks about the fourth text of Ayurveda in 4th AD written. It talks about the emotions and desires which leads to mental, physical illness and diseases. In those days also we had those kind of literature, and we had that kind of psychology, which I think West has not even tapped that. So where we would have missed out in this 100 years is because of they made this modern psychology has made this into a kind of you can say external behavior, or maybe the behavioral science. Behavioral science as a whole, they take it, and outer behavior. And this outer behavior, 100 years of research has only led to, maybe we cannot make a proof of concept, but today you see this epidemic of this egoism, the epidemic of corruption, or we talk about the mentality of the money, material worth. It is all the result of our outer behavior in the psychology, which has relied on the scientific research because more than introspection. Our Indian psychology has always been deep-rooted in introspection, and the 20th century psychology would have ignored this introspection because they felt that it was not a reliable method to get into introspection, which was evolved thousands of years and millions of years before in our Indian psychology itself. So where did we miss out? We could not package ourselves, we could not present ourselves, our yoga traditions, our yoga techniques, our inquiries into the research and the scientific finding, the reliable method, the theories which has come out so well, evolved within our ancient wisdom. Where did we miss out? And all these things has given the deep meaning into the questions what we ask about love, meaning, compassion, where I think in the Western psychology we would have missed out on all this love, meaning, and it was only on the outer behavioral science, and that has led to the disastrous consequences what you see the epidemic in the world today about corruption, or maybe the money or the jealousy or what it has happened. So now even the Western also are coming out of that notion, and they are also looking towards the healing and human growth. Now they have also understood, because everything has been derived from our Indian ethos, our Indian text, it has derived from Indian text. Even you talk about Maslow's, you talk about Howard Gardner, who talks about multiple intelligences, our school system, 6 or 7 intelligence on cognitive or mathematical or spatial intelligence. We have 64 multiple intelligences in our Bhagavad Gita. So maybe it would have been a kind of a less interest towards the people and heading towards that, aping the new kind of psychology where the outer behavior we would have missed out on all those things. So knowing about ourselves, knowing about our divine, it is just not a religion, but it is a way of experience, the way of life, and that can happen through this. Our yogis and rishis also have evolved and said that the human capacity cannot go beyond a particular limit, that human incapacity. What is the reason for the human incapacity? Our yogis and rishis have evolved a method, and they came out with the 2 answers. It may be because of egoism and too naive reliance on senses and the views, what we perceive and what we see as the self-observation. But then this leads to a lot of distortions. This has led to a lot of distortion, but our yogis and rishis and our texts have found a way out for it through detachment, meditation, yoga, and we can get into that and eradicate all those distortions and get evolved within ourselves and still enter into that world of evolution of maybe ecstasy or joy within ourselves, that love and compassion, which in the Western methods maybe would have. There is in the academic circle, there is a growing hegemony that Westernism and especially American psychology is being propagated at a very lengthy level. But today's global interaction with this kind of the world becoming one place with interaction, I think India has a big role to play. It doesn't restrict with Indian psychology itself. It goes beyond the Indian psychology, the humanity as a whole, and we have a lot of relevance and prospect and challenges, and I see unbelievable growth when it comes to even entrepreneurship, when it comes to consultancy, when it comes to yoga techniques, when it comes to even bringing out the information of the human understanding where the disaster can be averted, and India has a great role to play, and it has to become a central theme, the psychology in the world place, in the heart of the world. India has a major role to play, and I think you all participants, the seniors have done their job, and I think you have to carry this legacy forward. And it is possible with the collective consciousness and the collective wisdom, if you all can debate, deliberate through seminars, symposium seminars, but not only by discussion and understanding, but through actionating it, through outlook, proper outlooks, and with a lot of methodologies, with subject being becoming important in our university system, which I think we have still in 60, 70 years evolved to a small way, but a long way to go. Science has developed, but then the evolution has always been there, and the science has come from the heritage and the culture. So it is the process of amalgamation, of integration of spirituality and science. I think this is going to be the integration of the human growth and the human development, if it has to happen. Indian psychology has a great way to go. Maybe I had a lot of things to share, but I have been given 10 minutes time, so I would like to conclude my talk with the wishing the entire participants to get into the act of understanding analysis and show the world that Indian psychology is not an ordinary psychology, it is a way of life, it's a way of self-actualization, and our scriptures have shown that Hindu Hindu scriptures or Jain scriptures or Buddhism scriptures, all the books will look at Zen, yoga, and whatever it comes into psychology books. It is all evolved and very well done. And if that can be brought into a right packaging system, I think when Howard Gardner can make $1 billion, maybe in the commercial terms, if I just shift my base a little bit, takes out from Gita, copies beautifully, presents it very well, packages well, and says seminar for workshop for multiple intelligences, 3 lakh rupees, and 1 billion, 3 lakh rupees. Inhale, exhale. Ramdev Baba gave a technology of 800 crore popular profit in just inhale and exhale. So just one concept, inhale and exhale, and 800 crore, you breathe only 6 times in 1 minute, and you can increase your life by 108 years. If you breathe 20 times in 1 minute, you decrease your life by 60 years. So it is all the case of thinking and stress. So the external gratification, so we talk about a Pareto principle, 80-20 principle. 80% we get carried away by the external influences and 20%. So it should be the reverse approach, where 80% we get influenced within ourselves, and the external factors maybe which is not in our control should be 20%. And if that can be inward, if it can go inward, outward is automatically of the inward expression which comes. And this is where I think the thought and action misses out. Mahatma Gandhi has shown the way, Swami Vivekananda has shown the way, without any weapon, without any nuclear or without any extraordinary item, without any destructive thing, but by constructive thinking, they have shown what is Indian psychology. And but yet we are yet to take it forward. We just boast about good seminars and symposium, but when it comes to career, when it comes to businesses, I think we have a long way to go. But yes, it's a right platform with the intellectual personalities here on this board, and I think this is one of this kind seminar which has been organized, and I give all the credit to the center, Dr. Sundarajan and his team, and especially Professor K. Shantamani ma'am, for bringing the best of the intellectuals on this forum. And I'm sure these 2 days will be an eye-opener for all of you. If Howard Gardner with 6 multipliers can make $1 billion, every one of you can make $2 billion seated here in this audience. If I get an opportunity, I can give a seminar connected with psychology, with entrepreneurship, and still evolution, and still making the needs of the society and eradicating illiteracy. I think in 2-3 hours I can make you all understand and how the career can take place. So all of you become social entrepreneurs in Indian psychology and show the world that world can do it, India can do it. Thank you very much.
A thoughtful message, sir. I think it would certainly set the stage for the deliberations that are to take place for the next 2 days. Thank you, sir. It's our privilege to welcome Professor D. Nagaraja, former Director and Vice Chancellor of NIMHANS. Welcome you here, sir. We now move on to the central event of the day. To formally inaugurate the center, we request all the dignitaries to light the lamp accompanied with Vedic chanting.
अग्नेनय सुपथाराये अस्मान् विश्वानि देव वयुनानि विद्वान् यूयो भूयिष्ठान्ते नम उक्तिं विधेम ॐ प्रणो देवी सरस्वती वाजेभिर्वाजिनीवती धीनामवित्र्यवतु चोदयित्री सूनृतानां चेतन्ति सुमतीनां यज्ञं दधे सरस्वती ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः
Shantamani, Dr. Jain, Dr. Sundarajan, Dr. Reddy, distinguished speakers at this conference, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me thank the organizers for asking me to be here today at the time of the inauguration of this very important center for Indian psychology at Jain University in Bangalore. There are many reasons why I think this event is historical and can prove to be very important. As I heard the chairman of this institution speak, I felt that I should trade my time with him and he should be speaking. And I would have been very happy to listen to him. And then the dynamism and enthusiasm of the Vice Chancellor, the devotion and commitment of Dr. Shantamani, and the promise of the to-be Vice Chancellor, Dr. Rao, and the initiative you have taken to bring the cream of Indian psychology today, which includes Dr. Girish Mishra, who I call the Dean of Indian Psychology, and so many other very distinguished people. So the future for this center, I think, is assured. And I would be more than happy to do my little bit to help this organization. Why do I think that Indian psychology is so important and this center equally so important? The Vice Chancellor has mentioned about the strides that this university is making in aeronautics, this engineering, that engineering. Is very important. But at the same time, there are not many universities which are doing what you are doing today. The problem of humankind today is the asymmetry, the striking asymmetry, imbalance between the progress, advancement of the so-called outer sciences and the relative backwardness of our understanding and development in the area of inner sciences. This gap is at the bottom of the problems, is the base of the problems that humanity is confronting today. Why I say this? I say this because we are heading toward material abundance without the corresponding development in human sciences. We will be heading to moral bankruptcy. Material abundance and moral bankruptcy cannot go together. And we are, unfortunately, at this point where one is going up and the other is going down, with the result that we have so many billionaires in our country, and then we have half of our population below the poverty line. When you have plenty to give and make everybody happy to at least have enough to eat and live, we have those who are eating too much and have problems, and those who are eating too little, therefore they have problems. Now this growing asymmetry, this striking imbalance is at the root of our problems. Added to this, in our own situation, we have another problem. And these two together make our country now the showpiece of corruption in the world. Today we are the showpiece of corruption in the world today, everywhere, everywhere, any walk of life, not only in politics, in every walk of life, corruption. And I think this is related to this imbalance. Material growth, insatiable desire, and moral bankruptcy. This has to be addressed. It's not enough. You have a Lokayat, or you have Janpal bill, this bill, that bill. This is all important and necessary. the moral base, the fiber out of which we are growing, that must be built and strengthened. That syneos is the one that is most important and necessary. Why not we all do that first? While the politicians will take care of the other side, we have a responsibility to attend to this issue, to address this problem, to do what we can to help. Now, the second problem I'm trying to bring to your kind attention is we have suffered under the colonial rule. And over 60 years ago, we became independent, politically independent. But yet, I'm afraid to say that we are still intellectual colonies of the West. Our universities are still the intellectual colonies of the West. We use Western concepts, we use Western categories, we use Western models. And psychology is the prime example. With the result that we are not able to think the way that is relevant to our ethos. There is a confusion in our minds. That confusion multiplied or attached to or along with the main problem I have mentioned, the asymmetry between material progress and moral decline. These two compound together and confound and confuse our minds to the degree that we do not know what is right and what is wrong. We are willing to justify the wrong as the right and still live with it. Corruption has become a way of life. If you go to the top, yes, intellectuals, we are talking about it, go to this common man in the street, giving 10 rupees to get his whatever ration card or whatever it is, he doesn't think that's wrong. Has gone to their minds were so warped, so conflated and confused because of the ideological confusion, that conceptual confusion that we have. The same is true in Indian psychology. Do I need to remind you, most of you psychologists, how imitative, replicative, inefficient, ineffective and unattractive Indian psychology has been over these long years? Is almost 100 years old. Psychology in India was almost 100 years old. Started in Calcutta, first university, and then Mysore is probably the next university to start psychology, first in the south anyway. And it was under the influence of Wundt. Sen Gupta was a student of, what was his name? Our professor is well versed in that. Of an American Tichenor or somebody. Oh yeah, that's at Harvard. And he was a student, direct student of Wundt. And that tradition had continued for a while. And since then, till now, this thing is going on. That's the reason why Indian psychology or psychology in India was not able to make the kind of an impact that it could have made on our society, in our policy making, etc. It doesn't mean that psychology did not exist in India earlier, that people in India, even during the last century and now, are not aware of the importance of Indian psychology. You have Jagnath Sinha's 3 volumes of Indian psychology, other people writing about Indian psychology, but it was not studied, it was not read in any universities. And if there were any copies left, they are all unread in the library shelves of most universities. If they at all have those books, they were not being read. So we have been thinking for a while, something had to be done. And I am very happy to say that the Indian Council of Philosophical Research is one of the main stimulants for the development of Indian psychology. And this happened not after I took charge as a chairman, which was about 5 years ago, but even before my predecessor himself had initiated this process. In 2003, with the help of the ICPR, a conference was held in Pondicherry under the direction of Professor Matthias Carlson, who happens to be happily here. and 160 psychologists signed a declaration called the Pondicherry Declaration. It presented a manifesto, Pondicherry Manifesto for the Development of Indian Psychology. It's said in no uncertain terms that the psychology we do in India is not the right kind of psychology for us. We need to do something different, and soon. And I'm happy to know, in less than 10 years, there has been almost a revolutionary change, at least in the minds of a few people. And today we have several books published, almost half a dozen good books published on Indian psychology. Conferences like these were held in numerous places. Pondicherry had some, Visakhapatnam had some, and the Indian Academy of the premier organization of psychologists in the country had 2 successive sessions discussed Indian psychology. And a number of symposia, conferences, workshops were held in the area of Indian psychology. So I think Indian psychology is about to take off. In fact, we had at his institution a major conference on Indian psychology a few years ago, attended by over 300 people. And these all show that there is tremendous interest. The organizers Anu was telling me the other day, they only were planning 100 people, then they had 180 registrants. That shows we are now ready. And with the kind of an enthusiasm that our chairman can give, his entrepreneurship and his spiritual concerns can indeed help us to cross the barrier, to jump over the colonial barriers and move on to assert ourselves a psychology that is Indian, not in any geographical sense. It is in a different sense. Indian ethos is far more than restricted to geography. It is not Indian in the sense of only this subcontinent. It's not Indian in the sense that it's Hindu. It is more than Hindu. It's more than Indian in a geographical sense. It is a new school of thought in psychology that would have worldwide implications, that would have for us a special boost for psychology in our country. Okay, thank you. So this is the main topic on which I'm going to speak. I don't want to take more time. I think we're all running out. I would like to think that there is currently a body of knowledge that goes in the name of Indian psychology. Indian psychology refers to a distinct psychological tradition embedded in the insights contained in classical Indian thought. The person is the main concern in Indian psychology. Central to the person is consciousness, and therefore consciousness becomes very important. The existential circumstances surrounding the person condition, cloud, and constrain consciousness within us so that the inherent freedom eludes the person in her manifest behavior. The goal of Indian psychology is therefore to investigate the existential predicament of humans and suggest ways to elevate them to a state of freedom and perfection, conceived as a state of unconditioned being. There is then a basic presupposition here that in the existential context, the person is conditioned by a vortex of forces within and from outside, and is therefore fallible in many ways. But it is possible to transform her to an unconditioned state and enable to gain freedom and perfection in being. So this first, we're moving ahead, huh? First one, right? Indian psychology is a distinct psychological tradition rooted in the insights contained in classical Indian thought and manifest in the multitude of practices prevailing for centuries in India. Next, please. Now, the core, I don't know whether there is any connect between this, what I have and what you have there. The core psychological insights in the Indian tradition. May be seen, for example, in the assertion of the premise of consciousness in statements like Atmanamriti, Tattvamasi. Two, taxonomy of consciousness states as given in Mandukya Upanishad. The stages of psycho-spiritual development mentioned in Katha Upanishad, and the doctrine of course as given in Taittiriya Upanishads. And then of course you can't overlook Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is equally important. Everything we possess, wealth, health, happiness, had reference to self. Therefore, what's most important is understanding of the self. Then there are three ways of studying self, which are again mentioned in Brihadaranyaka, which is very important. And then the notion of karma, the concept of karma is a universal law, once again in that Upanishad. Of course, Isha Upanishad has its own contribution when it makes the distinction between apara and paravidya. This distinction again is very, very Indian and very, very important. Now, beyond the senses, there are objects. Beyond the objects, there is the mind. Beyond the mind, there is buddhi. I would like to translate as psyche. Concept we have yogic postures. Therefore, yoga must have been prevalent there even before Aryans came, if they did in fact come from somewhere else to India. So therefore, it is the case that this is not Indian in any narrow sense. For example, I find the four noble truths in Buddhism, the doctrine of dependent origination, and the pervasive phenomenology that we find of consciousness in the Buddhistic texts.